So today, we're going to talk about a manager whose passing brought this incredible wave of tributes from all over the football world. Players, entire nations, clubs, they all had something to say. We're diving into the story of Åge Hareide. And, this quote right here from Kasper Schmeichel, it's the perfect way to kick this off. Because if you really want to get what Åge Hareide was all about, you have to realize it was never just about the football. It was always something more. So, that's the big question, right? Why did this guy mean so much to so many people? Well, his story. It's this amazing mix of one-of-a-kind achievements, some serious tactical smarts, and maybe, most importantly, just a real, genuine human connection. To really get a handle on his impact, we've got to start by looking at his career all across Scandinavia. This is where he built a legacy that, honestly, nobody else can touch. Look, a lot of managers win trophies, right? But long before he was managing national teams, Hareide pulled off something that no one else has ever done. It's what made him a legend across the whole region. Okay, take a look at this. This table shows something that's just wild. Åge Hareide is the only manager ever to win the league title in Norway and in Sweden and in Denmark. Think about the rivalries between those countries. To go and dominate in all three, that's a whole other level. It really made him this unique pan-Scandinavian icon. But for all his club success, it was really his time with the Danish national team that put him on the world map. And man, it was the part of his career that sparked the most debate. 3. Just 3. What on earth could that number mean? That is the total number of times Åge Hareide lost a match in 42 games as the manager of Denmark. 42 games, 3 losses. A fan called it bonkers, and that's the perfect word for it. In international football, that kind of record is it's almost unbelievable. And that crazy stat, it builds up to an even more historic number, 34. That's how many games in a row the Danish national team went without a single loss under his leadership. It's the longest unbeaten run in their entire history. And you gotta remember, he took over a team that was really struggling. He completely turned them around, built this incredible resilience, this belief, and the rest is history. But here's where it gets interesting. This slide perfectly sums up what people were saying about his time in charge. On one side, you had the critics. They'd say the football was, a bit pragmatic, maybe even boring to watch sometimes. But on the other side, you had the results. The longest unbeaten run in Danish history. You couldn't argue with that. And this quote from a fan, I think it just nails it. He understood the squad he had and let it dictate his play style, not the other way around. That was his genius, right there. He wasn't trying to force some rigid philosophy on his players. He looked at what he had, a tough defense, a big physical midfield, a world-class playmaker like Christian Eriksen, and he built a system that made them shine. So, all that success, that incredible, unbeaten streak, it all led them to the biggest stage you can get, the 2018 World Cup in Russia. So what were the expectations for this team heading into Russia? What did people think of this super hard-to-beat Danish squad? Well, this preview from Goldman Sachs at the time actually gives us a really good picture. They were ranked 12th in the world, which is pretty solid. Their style was described as more direct and adaptive under Hareide. But check this out, 80-1 odds to win the whole thing. So yeah, people saw them as a good team, a tough out, but definitely not one of the favorites. And they did what they needed to do. They got out of a tough group that had the eventual winners, France, in it. That set them up for a huge knockout game against Croatia, who, as we know, ended up going all the way to the final themselves. Now, here's a really interesting little piece of football trivia. Denmark did lose that match in a pretty heartbreaking penalty shootout. But in the official record books, a match that's decided by penalties is actually recorded as a draw. So what does that mean? Well, technically, that incredible 34-game unbeaten streak was still alive. And all this success, it wasn't just about tactics on a whiteboard. It was about the man himself. It was about how he connected with his players. And we're back to Kasper Schmeichel because he just sums it up so well. He said Hareide was all about treating people with respect. He had this core belief that if you do that, you'll get the absolute best out of people. And, well, he certainly did. The results prove it. His impact really went way beyond his own time as manager. He created this incredible unity, a foundation that stuck around for years. In fact,
a lot of people say that the foundation he built was a huge reason why that same group of players had that amazing emotional run to the Euro 2020 semifinals, even under a new manager.
And that brings us to the last part of our story. And this is, without a doubt, the most bittersweet part of his time with Denmark. For a long time, it really felt like the story just didn't get the ending it deserved. It was just this perfect storm of bad timing. So first, Hareide gets the team qualified for Euro 2020, and they did it without losing a single game. But then the Danish FA announces that they've already hired his replacement for after the tournament. Then, of course, the pandemic hits, and Euro 2020 gets pushed back a whole year, and by the time the tournament actually happened, Hareide's contract was already up. He never got to lead the team he built to that final tournament. It's just brutal. For a while, the whole thing just felt messy, unresolved. But then the story got a better ending. In 2022, Hareide was honored at Denmark's home stadium. And in this really powerful moment, he accepted the red and white Danish scarf, one he'd actually refused to take earlier out of frustration. And the whole stadium just gave him this massive standing ovation. It was a real moment of healing. And so we'll end on this beautiful tribute from journalist Morten Brun, who said, "Let us gently give Åge Hareide a red and white scarf to take with him on his final journey, from Denmark, with thanks. A true legend in Scandinavia. A tactician who just didn't lose, and a leader who people genuinely respected. He earned his place in the hearts of so many, and his legacy will be remembered not just for all those incredible results, but for the kind of man he was."